Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time I would like to give you my honest thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 2. It's been out for a few days now. I've been trying it out, playing through some of the different games like Mario Kart World, Cyberpunk, the Gamecube app, but also looking at all the different features of the system, trying it out in different ways, seeing how the controllers feel, and I'm ready to give you my full honest thoughts on the console. We've been waiting such a long time for this system. Has it been worth the wait? Or are there issues that need to be addressed? That's what I would like to dive into today. But before going forward, let me point out I'm aiming for a goal of 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So this past weekend I put out a video talking about my thoughts on Mario Kart World, specifically with the free roam, and as the days draw on I'll probably have different videos not just about news and theories, but also talking about my experience with the different games on Switch 2 and the different elements of the different games on Switch 2. Like, there may be another video or two just about Mario Kart World and my overall experience of the game. But I say all that now so you know that I'm not going to be diving too much into my experience of the games for this particular video. It's mostly about the console itself, but I will say the games I've played, they've looked sharp, they've felt great, and I've really had no issues with playing games on the console. What I really want to talk about is the console itself. Navigating the menus and all, that's all wonderful. I really like how the icons are more rounded now. You see the extra bit of colors. There's a lot more nice sound effects, as I'll play a little bit right here. Even the eShop menu is vastly improved, and I really appreciate how much faster it runs now, and I love the colors that are put together now. It looks a lot better, it runs a lot better, it's far more usable. And I really like how when you press the home button now, you can hear a little beep when the Switch 2 turns on, somewhat similar to a PlayStation. It's a different sound, but it's an overall similar effect. Perhaps not as pronounced, which I think I might actually prefer, because as many of you may have seen with the memes regarding PlayStation, you don't want everyone in the house to know that you're turning on the console. It's not that loud with Switch 2, but it's a nice little marker to let you know that it is turning on. Something I would like to note about my impressions of the Switch 2 is that I never picked up a Switch OLED. I waited for the Switch 2. I got a Switch 1 day 1, March 3rd of 2017, and that console has been through everything. The fan stopped working, there are different cracks, the battery died entirely, it could not turn on, I had to replace the battery. This game can no longer play open world games or even some somewhat fairly intensive games like Mario Kart 8 for more than 15 minutes at a time, so I was definitely in need of an upgrade with the Switch 2, so having the Switch 2, it feels fantastic, and let me tell you, the screen difference is substantial. I love the size, I love the sharpness of the screen, the colors, it's really, really nice. Now, as I already said, I'm not comparing this to the OLED screen, but from what I do understand of the Switch 2 screen, it does have high dynamic range, it is a larger screen at a higher resolution with a better refresh rate so we can see better frames. So there's a variety of things about the Switch 2 screen that, at least objectively, we know are improvements over the OLED. And I definitely get a greater sense of the blacks and the deep colors, a lot of things that people talk about from the OLED, so I still feel like I'm getting a really nice premium experience here, at least in comparison to the original Switch 1. It feels like such a substantial upgrade here. And just the way the system feels, it feels premium, it feels quality, it doesn't feel like a toy. Like, let's just talk about the kickstand on the Switch 1. That thing is floppy, it comes off really easy, and it does not hold your Switch in tabletop mode really well. The kickstand for Switch 2, however, is a vast improvement. It's very sturdy, there's no wobbliness at all, it has varying angles, it does not feel like it can break, it's very strong, it's firm, and I think this is a really nice improvement. And for what I understand of the OLED kickstand, I think it's an improvement from that one as well. I know some people have talked about how the kickstand, at least before we've gotten our hands on the Switch 2, is technically more narrow, thinner than the Switch 1 OLED's kickstand, but it's really strong and sturdy. They put some nice little metal in there, like this is something that's going to stay working perfectly fine for the next 8 to 10 years or so. I have zero concerns about saying that. And you know, an issue I had playing in handheld mode in Switch 1 is that the way the controllers kind of fit into my hands for extended play periods, I would start to actually kind of feel the Joy-Cons like starting to numb my hands because they'd be kind of jabbing into my palms. So over time, it became uncomfortable, and either A, I'll have to play a different way or use some sort of special grips, or just stop, or be continually adjusting my hands. With Switch 2 so far, now I haven't played for hours at a time yet in handheld mode, but from what I've played so far, it's actually felt quite comfortable. It is a larger system, as you can see here. I'm showing some of the size comparisons if you haven't seen comparisons before. And while it is substantially larger, I don't feel like I'm holding this hulk of a device either. It still feels like a Switch, but a nicer one that feels comfortable to hold with a much better screen. And also, better Joy-Cons. The Joy-Cons themselves are larger and more comfortable to hold. I really do like the feel of them. However, here is one of my criticisms of the Switch 2. It's not all praise. I actually prefer how the Joy-Cons felt in the Joy-Con grip for Switch 1, because with the Joy-Con grip on Switch 1, those grips felt really good to hold and it fit quite nicely into my hands. With the Switch 2 Joy-Con grip, it does fit. I'm not saying it's a bad grip, but I do also feel the gaps at the corners. It does not feel as snug, even though it is technically overall larger. So I'm not going to go as far as to say the Joy-Con 2 grip is horrendous. Like, I have used it and I didn't take too much issue with it, but I also have no intentions of using that as a main way to play any game. It's only going to be something I'm going to use for multiplayer. And actually, I'm considering I might not even really use it that much at all, because I actually really enjoy just holding the Joy-Cons themselves, the Joy-Con 2s, because since they are larger, they feel a lot better in my hands, and I do feel like I could enjoy playing a lot more games just holding the Joy-Cons individually in my hands. Which is something I would do sometimes with the Joy-Con 1s on Switch 1, but given how small they are and the buttons and the control sticks, I didn't like using those for a lot of games. There were the occasional games, but for the most part I would prefer using my Pro Controller. The occasional games that I would like to use the Joy-Con 1s for, though, were games that required an accurate D-pad button, because since the Joy-Con 1s don't actually have a normal D-pad but just directional buttons on the bottom left, it proved to be quite accurate for games like Street Fighter or Tetris. I play a lot of Tetris 99. And I'm sure I'll be able to do the same thing with the Switch 2 Joy-Cons there, but because of their increased size and improved ergonomics, I can see myself just using them for games in general, not just Tetris. However, I will take this moment to move on to talking about the Switch 2 Pro Controller, because I do have the sense that the D-pad feels a lot better. I played Tetris, had no issues. I played Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, which used the D-pad a lot, and didn't have any issues there. It seems that the D-pad accuracy issues from the Switch 1 Pro Controller haven't rectified with the Switch 2 Pro Controller. And that's not my only compliment about this controller. I do think that this sentiment we're seeing online that the Switch 2 Pro Controller could be the best controller ever, I think it's actually a legitimate conversation to have. I also own a PlayStation 5 and I really enjoy that controller. A lot of people have talked about how that's maybe the best controller ever. This Switch 2 Pro Controller at least competes. And it's hard for me to quite describe it, but the way it feels to simply hold this Switch 2 Pro Controller, I don't know what they did with the plastic or the grips, because it feels simultaneously smooth and sturdy, while also having a nice grip at the same time, almost like a rubber, but a rubber that doesn't bother you, that's still smooth. It has just a subtle amount of give, so it's comfortable to hold, but also doesn't feel wobbly in any way. It's very sturdy. So I understand how strange that may sound, but that is how it feels to me. And many people have talked about the control sticks and how they feel like anti-gravity sticks or what have you. I'm not going to go that far. I don't think they feel like absolute magic, but what I will say is it does feel like when you do press them against the sides, it doesn't feel like you're slapping it hard into rough plastic. The impacts are absorbed, and so it does not make that much noise. The term that Nintendo used to coin these control sticks, smooth gliding sticks, I would say is justified. It is a smooth gliding stick. So yes, they are nice. And all the buttons on the controller feel very responsive, easy to press, nice and snappy. It does what it's supposed to do, and well. But I do want to speak on some new features of the Pro Controller, and that is the audio jack and the GL/GR buttons. The audio jack works as you would expect. You plug in a headset and it does what it should do. You can talk to people through the game chat through a headset with a mic. You can listen to the game audio through the Pro Controller in that way. This is something we did not have on Switch 1 that to me was sorely missed. I enjoyed that experience on other consoles like PlayStation and such. So I'm glad that now Nintendo has modernized the Pro Controller to work in the same way. And on the note of game chat, because I know I didn't really speak too much on that, it works. With screen sharing, yeah, there may be a little bit of frame drops and things like that, but in terms of the audio experience, it's seamless. The same way it works on other platforms, so Nintendo has achieved parity here, at least in terms of voice chat, it seems. But coming back to the Pro Controller, I've been playing through Mario Kart World, and recently there's been this new mechanic we've discovered where you can turn around the right stick to look around in the game. We already knew that, but you can still do it during races, which if you're pressing the acceleration button, the A button, you're not going to have access to the right stick with your thumb. So one of the solutions for this is to use the Quick Map GL/GR buttons, and what's really nice about this, you do not have to go back to the settings to customize this. There is a Quick Map option where you hold the home button, the same way you would hold the home button to have access to going to sleep mode very quickly. You can still do that, but you can also quickly map your GL/GR buttons. You just press the GL/GR button, press the button you want to map it to, and there it goes, on a per game basis, by the way. So it's very quick and easy to do, takes half a second at most, it's super quick. And the GL/GR buttons feel great. I'm not pressing them accidentally while I'm holding the Pro Controller, and it feels pretty natural. Now I'm actually playing through Mario Kart World, and I press down on my right grip, or the GR button that is there, and I am accelerating my kart. It feels natural, and I really like it. I can see myself using these buttons a lot more for different types of games when I want to quick customize something for whatever sort of direction I'm taking the gameplay. Something else I want to mention here is the Gamecube controller. I have the Gamecube controller and I really like it. It feels wonderful. It feels like a Gamecube controller. I was actually surprised when I started playing Soul Calibur 2, a game I used to enjoy quite a bit back in the day when I was a little kid on the Nintendo GameCube, and it all came back to me so quickly, and I think that happened in large part because this Gamecube controller is a Gamecube controller just for the Switch 2. Now, technically, even though Nintendo's not advertising it, you can use this controller throughout the console. However, if there's a game that requires you to click on the left or right stick, you're not going to be able to do that. You don't have the same customization options like you would on a JoyCon 2 or a Switch 2 Pro controller. So do keep that in mind, but if you're playing a game that has simple controls like Mario Kart, like Smash Brothers, you probably can still use this GameCube controller as a part of your lineup of controllers for your friends when doing like a 4-player or even more multiplayer experience. But specifically to play GameCube games, the GameCube controller is totally ideal. Now, something I haven't spoken on yet is the mouse controls. And this is where I have a little bit more criticism. I actually really like that you can seamlessly change from just normally holding the Joy-Cons, which as I said earlier, really comfortable to do, and then just turning it to the side, and you can use a surface to kind of move around a mouse, and you can use this in the menu. It's wonderful. I use it to play Cyberpunk. It actually plays really well, like in terms of responsiveness, it's great. However, I do kind of get the sense that the Joy-Cons feel a bit too narrow for me. Like, there's a little bit of discomfort there, there's a little bit of getting used to. It's not like hurting my hand or anything, but I feel like I need to hold a little more, right? Like, it doesn't feel exactly like a mouse because the mouse is a bit wider. The Joy-Con, when you have it flipped sideways like this, it's fairly narrow. Now, I will say, my hands are probably above average in size, so if you have smaller hands, maybe it'll still feel better for you. But I do feel like Nintendo should eventually introduce some sort of accessory to make the Joy-Con grip feel a bit more robust, or perhaps there are going to be some third parties that'll do something like this. Now, Nintendo does include these straps, and I will say that with the straps, they plug in quite easily. They feel a lot better than the Joy-Con 1 equivalents, which are kind of really hard to take off. These come off easily. And what's neat about these straps is that you don't need them to play the Joy-Cons sideways for like multiplayer games when you want to play it like that. The SL and SR buttons are actually vastly improved with the Joy-Con 2s. They feel great, they're easy to press, they're large, and they're snappy. The Joy-Con 1s were like these small little buttons that were hard to reach, didn't feel quite right. didn't like them. You kind of felt like you need to put the straps on there, and even then it still didn't feel quite right, and they were sort of annoying to take off. That is not the case at all with the Switch 2 Joy-Cons holding them sideways with SL and SR buttons. But the main purpose you would put on these straps is so you can give these controllers a little bit more of a platform to slide around as a mouse. And while I do think this improves the experience a little bit from a holding perspective, it's not dramatic. So I would say my criticism of the Joy-Cons feeling a bit too narrow for mouse mode in terms of the overall ergonomics, it's still the case even with the grips on there. That said, I still found Cyberpunk to be playable. I played for a few hours in mouse mode and it worked, and over time I did find myself getting a little bit more used to it, so I don't think you absolutely need an extra accessory there. I just think it's not the most comfortable thing. It's not like holding the Switch 2 Pro controller where we're having conversations of this maybe being the most comfortable controller of all time, or even when we're holding the Joy-Cons individually, that feels really great too, or the Gamecube controller. There's definitely work to be done with how mouse controls feel. I like the overall concept of it, but the execution, I think there's still some room to build on there. That all said, I feel really great about my Nintendo Switch 2. It feels like such an awesome upgrade over the Switch 1. I love the screen, I love the Joy-Cons, I love how the menus work now, I love how there's all these small little quality of life updates. The Switch 2 Pro controller is amazing, the GameCube controller is amazing. I'm happy that Game Chat is a key feature to the Switch 2, and now there's a lot more parity across the board compared to Nintendo's competitors. This is an awesome system. It is a dramatic improvement over the Switch 1. I do think anyone who moves on from the Switch 1 to Switch 2, they're going to feel that difference in quality. It is going to feel worth it. And really, the sky is the limit for the Switch 2. All that's going to hold it back is just how good the games are on the console, and I think we're already off to a pretty great start in that department. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.